Welcome back. We're talking about the final piece of the day denouement, I guess you could call it, and it is strip till. So we've talked a little bit about taking out compaction with reduced tillage, which is actually considered a vertical till piece, the 4835. We just talked about the accelerators, vertical till, slicer, dicer, mixing a little bit of soil into the profile. And now we'll talk about something that gives us the ability to build a planting strip while putting nutrients down. And the strip till offering that we have is the Gladiator. We've had many iterations, I shouldn't say many, but we started out as a 1200, and then we went to the 1205. The major change there was more in the fertilizer. We went from a 6-ton to a 9-ton fertilizer tank. Made some changes to the frame, obviously, to handle that heavier load, and also went with a 10-bolt hub versus an 8-bolt. And now we've introduced the 1210. From an agronomic perspective, each machine is going to build an ideal strip. So agronomically, all the machines are similar, but they made some improvements, obviously, to the frame and different things like that over time. When you take a look at the 1210 versus the 1205, they've really made some nice changes to it that I would consider more significant than the 1200 to the 1205. When we have a 1205 over behind Jason, so as I can kind of point it out to you, you can kind of do one of these. In the front of the machine, the scraper has changed on that. It's basically a 2-bolt system. A lot easier to loosen 2 bolts, pull them out and adjust that. The other models used a J-hook under the frame. And if you talk to any of the previous Gladiator users or current users that have those models, they'll understand that. So the adjustability in the scraper is much improved. They made a little bit of a design change here, 16-inch waffle blade versus an 18-inch. Again, no ergonomic difference. More of a manufacturing. They eliminated a hole. They both the 18-inch ran in the top hole, so basically you're running the same depth in each. You take a look at the fertilizer placement. We've added a stainless hose with an air diffuser. You take a look at the older design, it did not have an air diffuser on it. It was kind of up to the farmer to take the fines off the row unit and distribute them elsewhere. Fines on the row unit are very detrimental, as you guys know with fertilizer. Seems to find every nook and cranny. And then the back reel, they've made some changes to it. You can see, I don't know if you can see from the camera, but they've taken and made it a solid reel versus the pleated reel of the old design, which enables us to run the chain through the reel. And now we've got, instead of a 1 bolt per chain, you've got basically 1 bolt for 2 chains. So as far as maintenance goes. But the other thing with it is the wearability on it. It's not wearing on the chain itself. It's only wearing on partial length. Early on, I don't know if you've seen Jason, but you will get more acres with this new design. You can see with the 1205 how the chains stretch. They're still going to stretch like that, but they're going to have a longer life to them. So that's kind of the changes. Let's kind of step back and talk about strip till and kind of some of the benefits to the system. Basically, we're putting a strip in and we're dropping our nutrients down into that strip. So you think about it from a cost perspective, how many tillage passes do we generally do in a conventional tillage system? We're doing 1 pass in the fall, 1 or 2 in the spring, so let's just be cautious about it and say we're only doing 2 passes. Well, you've got a fertilizer pass, that's the 3rd pass. So you got 3 passes that we're taking down to 1 just to begin with. You take a look at your fertilizer program. Are you banding or are you broadcasting? There's a lot of research out there that shows the benefits to banding, getting those nutrients down in that zone where they're needed, very readily be accessible to that corn root. When you take a look at this design, how we do our fertilizer placement, we've got side plates here that you can adjust the depth that you drop that independent of our shank depth. So if you're running, say, 7 inches at the shank, but we want to run our band at 5 inches, we can move this up that 2 inches, so we're getting our band at 5 inches regardless of the depth. You look at the drop tube on it, it's got a 90 in the bottom. That fertilizer hits this, not going to go down to the bottom of the trench. It's going to hit that 90 and it's going to send it out into the soil profile. So this machine will give you a very good, consistent band. When you take a look at the design of it, as the other aspect of the fertilizer band is consistency, not only where we're dropping it here, but how it comes out. So we got a parallel link built into it. So in other words, as we're going under uneven ground, it's flexing, and that's going to keep our band very consistent. If we hit a rock, again, it's individual. So we got the springs here. It's going to impact our coulter. It's not going to impact our band. So we're going to get good consistency. As it comes through and hits our reel, our parallel link is going to flex. And again, we're going to keep our consistency of the band. So it's going to really give a very good consistency to that band, which is important. What happens if, say, if you've got a machine that gives you uneven depth? So say a coulter in hard ground. You're dropping that nutrient. Sometimes it's an inch, sometimes it's 3 inches, sometimes it's 2 inches. What happens when that corn plant germinates? Well, the winter is the first one to find the fertilizer, right? And so that's going to pop up. And then as the second one finds it at 2 inches, slower to pop up. So basically our emergence is going to be uneven in those systems. That's why it's critical to have a very good consistency to that band. You take a look at the cutting coulter. It's a 25-inch cutting coulter. We do have some adjustment on that. When that machine comes from the factory, it'll drop in about 3 to 4 inches deep. Why is it important to have a bigger coulter on it? Well, what happens when you get that, I think the University of Minnesota called it the fluffy soil syndrome, where basically that coulter at 3 to 4 inches deep, it doesn't have anything to cut into. Not like the environment we're out here today, where the ground's fluffy. So now we're pushing those stalks down, and guess what? They start to hairpin, and then we plug. We can adjust those down another 2 inches, get us down to that hard ground to be able to cut that residue. So that is an important design as far as that 25-inch coulter. We have basically our row cleaners. They are weight-based, so we've got 3 per half row or 6 per row. If you take a look at it, we've got 2 bolts on and 2 will come off. So if you notice when we run out here, you can kind of see that soil coming off because we're running full weights. The ground is not ideal for 3 weights. Not enough residue, so we're moving soil. When we move soil, what happens? Well, we're basically creating a groove in the soil. And what do grooves in soils do? Well, water finds them, and water tends to run, and that's where you have your erosion issues. So it's something that you can see right from the cab of the tractor. There are years where you can run basically in your bean ground full weights because the ground is that hard, and you're not moving the soil. The 3 weights are really designed for corn, 1 weight for beans. So it's just one of those situational, how many weights am I going to run? We've got basically the closing disc through the back, or berm builders, I'll call them. The nice thing with it is you look at how easy it is to adjust. Right now we're at an 18-degree angle. So our berm's going to be a little bit higher, not as much width. And if it says, well, we don't need it that high, that's how quickly we can go to 10 degrees. Now we're going to have a little shorter berm, a little wider berm. Why is berm height, berm width important? Well, if you think about our growing degree days up here, you need about a 12-inch width to optimize the pop-up of the seed. So this is what that's going to deliver. Sometimes it'll narrow to 8 in some corn ground, narrow and then widen back out. But it's generally going to be in that 10 to 12-inch range as far as the width of the berm goes. The height is important because what happens if we don't have a high enough berm and it goes negative? If you take a look back, heck, strip till's been out since, I don't know, forever. Yeah, you can say that because it's probably been about 35 years, I suppose, forever. But the old strip till machines couldn't build a berm. You can't build a berm, it's going to settle out, it's going to go negative, and it's going to stay cold, it's going to stay wet, and basically it's going to cause a tremendous loss in yield. So that berm height is very important, and like I say, we can manage that very quickly right here. No wrenches. Depth is controlled here. Again, no wrenches. That comes up and basically slide it up or down and lock it back in. So very nice wrenchless design. The reel is just basically to knock down some clods, give us a good shape. as it kind of comes onto that berm, and it's got the snapping action that basically keeps it mud free and keeps it running in less than ideal conditions. So very rarely, I don't know if there's any other manufacturers using a chain design that I know.
No, and the chains are actually a real important part of that. For what you said about keeping that basket clean, but you get a lot of action that's coming off of that chain. Speed makes a difference. You know, the more speed you have, the finer the finish you're going to get out of that basket. But
the one thing with the shank is we got a 2 1/4 inch nose on that, and that's one of the keys to it, is that 2 1/4 inch nose will keep that in the ground, and it's going to, again, keep that band consistent. So when you take a look at a shank versus coulter, the big thing that I'll say with it is a shank is going to get you consistency of band. A coulter design is very dependent on weight, and a lot of times they'll use the ballast, the fertilizer tank for ballast, fill it up, try to get that depth. But guess what happens is that tank empties. That coulter is going to follow that because it doesn't have as much weight. So the shank will ensure that we get that band at that appropriate depth. We offer the Gladiator in basically a 4-row configuration, all the way up to a 24-row configuration. We got the 12-row out here today. We offer, or partnered with Montag, we offer a single bin. So if you're just blending, that's what's important to you. We got a single bin option. It's a 9-ton, and we also have the twin bin option, which is a 4.5 split. Very unique design with that twin bin, in that we've got cartridges on each side that basically feed the center. So you got one hose for 2 products, blended at the tank, sent to the row unit. So, anything, Jason? That?
No, I think you got it. It's nice doing your primary tillage, your secondary tillage. You've got the opportunity to do your fertilizer application all in one pass. It's really a nice precision management tool.
With variable rate.
What's that?
With variable rate.
You've got so many different operations that you can really dial in for your operation to make them maximize. You can definitely maximize them, from the tillage all the way up through the fertilizer plan and things like that.
So some final thoughts on it. It seems easy, but it is very management intensive. Because remember, we're putting our strips in basically in the fall time, and we're going to plant on them in the springtime. So the guy operating the tractor really needs to know what he's doing, or how to plant a field. The tank, keeping that full, is also a consideration, because that is basically, you think about it, 40-foot implement in the fall time, you can get a lot of acres done per day, but you got to keep the tank full. So a second consideration with it. The third thing I'll just mention on it is, if you're thinking about it and you do decide to go into strip till, give it 3 years minimum. You'll start to see the structure of your soil change. You'll start to understand the system much better. Don't give up after a year or two. You give it at least 3 years before you're going to pull the pin on it. So with that, let's build some strips. All right, we just ran the strip till machine, the Gladiator. Actually, he's finishing up in the last strip. I just want to talk a little bit about what the importance of the strip, and kind of how the Gladiator designs the strip. So in this extremely hard ground, you can kind of see what we got for depth. So about a 6-inch depth, and that's when the machine is set at 6 inches. I talked a little bit about the width of it. Again, we don't have a lot of residue out here, but if you take a look at about where that strip is at, it's about a 12-inch strip. What about the height of it? Let's do it the old-fashioned way. I don't know if you can see that. That's about a 4-inch height on it. So some guys say, well, the clods are bad. What's going to happen to this clod over winter? It's going to absorb moisture, it's going to freeze, and basically when you come back in to plant, it's going to fall apart on you. So I talked about that 2 1/4 inch nose on it. So as we dig that strip out, you've got loose soil coming out of the V. There's our 2-inch point in the bottom. So basically you got plus or minus 8 inches of loose soil. So for some reason, if your planter got a little bit off track or your auto steer and you were off a couple inches, well, what is that seed going to do? It's still going to find that band because it's going to be path of least resistance and it's going to follow that down. So with this type of design, you still have a little bit of operational error that's not going to cost you in the field. This machine was set at an 18-degree angle, so we could adjust that to 10, which is just going to take the height down a little bit and give us a little bit more width. So it's just something that you can actually set field to field. It's something that only takes a couple minutes to set.